people relate to us as CID. So it's like, oh, wow, okay, that's a Sony show. Kaun Banega Crorepati was a huge risk. And then Jackie Shroff is a friend of one of the founders. And that's how the Magnificent Seven of us came together.
9 startups you've been through. Which experiences taught you the most?
I would say Sony, because it was at a different level. It started from a satellite that had to go up in space. And the satellite that went before us exploded. I had a startup and that startup went bust. I had to sell all my stocks. I had to withdraw my 401k, which is something that happens in America, and put everything in it.
When that final 2013 exit happened, what was the valuation?
Weighted average was still over $1 billion. My dad, before he passed away, he asked me, he said, how many zeros are there if you count it in rupees terms? And I couldn't give him that answer.
Since you have been, say, LP in a fund and you've seeded a lot of initiatives, how do you think about capital allocation in general?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stages, and the fifth one being that you're 90% in equity. One is where 90% in fixed income or bonds. I'm more skewed, more risk taker, so I'll do 4.
Now that you're 70, you said that you still have very exciting plans for what lies ahead. Who you want to do business with in the long term?
Plant-based, cell-based, and fermentation. And only these 3 technologies. So cell-based is lab-grown meat, as they call it, right? Carbon footprint is so bad today in the world that there won't be enough protein to feed the world if you just keep going at the pace at which we're going.
You have interviewed late Ratan Tata and Deepak Chopra. Were there any surprising stories for you that challenged your own personal belief and relationship with money? Hello JP, welcome to the India Opportunity Show. Thanks for joining me here today.
And thank you so much for inviting me.
I don't know if you recall, but I met you as a 21-year-old back in Silicon Valley. I was a part of the Rajiv Motwani Fellowship. And, as a group of young entrepreneurs who had gone from India on an immersion trip to Silicon Valley, we were pitching to investors left, right, and center. And I remember you being so kind and so present during my pitch to you, even though at that point you told me that, I'm an LP in a fund and that's how I invest. But you were just so present when we were pitching to you, and you were so kind and such a good listener, I would say, that it always stayed with me. And, as I've gone through life, it's become my mission to give back in different ways, which is how this podcast also started. But thank you for that and that memory.
Yeah, I wish that I remembered everything from that. I do remember that Asha Jadeja, the Rajiv Motwani Foundation, they invited a bunch of folks from India, and so young entrepreneurs who had come, or wannabe entrepreneurs who came. And so I do distinctly recall meeting you, but I don't remember the pitch that you gave me at that point of time. And then you suddenly surfaced and you asked me to come here and do this. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course, you have such a phenomenal life story. And, to be 70 and look like that and, have such a positive aura that you exude, I think it's phenomenal. So I can't wait to share your story with everyone.
Again, thank you, but that's good genes and a high happiness index. We can talk about that.
Yes, we will. So, JP, let's talk about, your backstory with Sony TV. I think, you had spent 12 years at IBM at that point, but you then decided to take a bet on yourself and venture out. What was that like?
So the first thing is that I am from a business family. So I'm the first generation, my brother and I, who have ever worked for anyone. So my dad, grandfather, great-grandfathers have never worked for anyone, right? We have typical Gujarati banyas who always had businesses. But my father's business was not doing so well, and that's how we both went into doing jobs. So when I was with IBM in Houston, they sent me to Singapore to start India as a country. And so when India got started from scratch, from headcount 0, we were the infamous group who actually launched it, the IBM India. And now IBM's largest headcount in the world is in India. When that assignment got over in Singapore, I was asked to go back again to Houston, and my wife would have nothing to do with it. And so I quit IBM after 12 and a half years. But remember that my genes were always from a business family. And so I became a forced entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And at that point in time, the genesis of it is that 2 of my friends said that we want to start a cable and satellite channel. Would you, come and help us? And I knew nothing about television back then, right? So I asked my partner, who from IBM, both of us had left IBM and had started an IT company. I asked him, saying, hey, listen, these guys are asking me to help them with this TV channel. And they said, well, Yeah, you don't work for anyone, we don't work for anyone, and you don't have to take any boss's permission. It's just you and me. Just keep one leg in this company that we have started, the IT company, and the second leg you can go out and do just anything you want. And so then I agreed with my two founders of SET, Sony Entertainment Television, that I'll come and help. And that's the genesis, and that's how I got started in that project.
Wow, what a phenomenal backstory. But a lot of people might not be familiar with, the kind of journey one would have had. Back in 1995, if you go back, there wasn't such a thriving startup ecosystem in India, as you would call it. What was that like for you?
So again, that's the beauty of it, right? In a place like Singapore, right, which is where I was, there was no ecosystem of entrepreneurship, right? I think business, loosely termed, is something that you start which is non-tech typically, and entrepreneurship typically you associate that with tech, entrepreneurship and tech. So in this case, what happened is that the founder, he thought of this idea that ZTV was the only cable and satellite television channel back then. And he said there is nothing else. And in America, there are 30, 40, 50 back then cable and satellite. Now there are thousands. And so he says, wouldn't it be great if we launched a cable and satellite channel, the second one in India? And that was really the genesis of it. But again, in the initial period, it took a lot of money because a transponder used to cost $5 million. So ZTV paid $5 million for a transponder per year. So that's huge amounts of money. And so we were a bunch of individuals who came together, and there's a backstory how each one. So my partner is Shemaru Video, Raman. And so Raman Maru, he came into the fold, and then I came into the fold. I brought another gentleman into the fold who's from IIT IIM. So he was a finance brain behind it. And then Jackie Schroff is a friend of one of the founders. So Jackie came into the fold. And that's how the magnificent seven of us came together. But back then, we were just naive enough to think that we could launch our own channel, the seven of us. And we started talking to a few other multinational channels, including HBO and Sony and a few of these other folks. And Sony had a gentleman called William Pfeiffer who was scanning, and he said, hey, I have gone around and looked for partners in India because we want to launch a channel in India, but we've never heard of them, not heard of you guys. Well, obviously, you would have never heard of us because we were nobodies. We just had come together, this whole bunch of people. But as he kept digging into it, he saw this lean, mean, agile bunch of people who are hungry, and we did not want 50% equity. Right? All the big nationals of India, all the big families wanted to partner with Sony, but they all wanted 51% equity. That was one issue. And two, they were big names, but they didn't have the hunger as a startup entity. And so ultimately, they got rid of, by elimination, all the other joint venture partners and chose us as a joint venture partner, which was incredible. Right? Back then, they said that, well, would you mind if we took the majority equity? Because if you allowed that, we could go back to Sony and try to get this name of the channel called Sony Entertainment Television. Oh my God. I mean, we went into the next room, say, okay, let us think about it, talk about it. We went into the next room, I distinctly remember, and we just wasted 30 minutes because it was a no-brainer. There was nothing to think about it.
Yeah.
And so we were just completely euphoric. First of all, we didn't have that much money to put together to fund the 50%. And so actually we were quite happy to take a little bit less so that they could take more than 50%. But this was back in the 93, 94 timeframe, right? So this whole thing happened.
Right.
And then we kept working with them with regards to the agreements and joint venture agreements and how the structuring would work, who would take the CEO positions, and how would the board be structured. Again, as a group, individually we knew a little bit, but collectively we didn't have too much idea about what we were doing. But we just launched into it. And on the 8th of October, 1995, a button was pushed in Singapore where the uplink launch channel is, right? And we launched from there, and that has never stopped, meaning it's a continuous 24/7 feed that's going up from 8th October 1995 till today. But that was the first channel. And now, of course, they have many, many, many channels.
Wow. No one would have known this had you not shared it on this platform. But give us insight into what the early days were like. Having a big network's backing is obviously a great success for a group of nobodies, as you call them at that point. But, obviously the hunger, ambition that you guys had was the holding force which glued it together and brought this initiative to life. So what were the early years like for you?
Yeah, so early years, one of the things that we all agreed on was that the 5 CXO positions, neither they will take nor we will take, right? Because we wanted the CXO positions, we wanted our CEO, we know India, you guys don't know India. And they said, well, we know how to run television channels, we are the majority shareholders, how can we not be the CEO? But we finally came to terms and 5 positions, so by CEO, CFO, the head of programming, etc., the head of finance, those 5 positions, we will bring professionals. So we went out and interviewed professionals, and we found our first CEO, right? And then a year later, we replaced him with the CFO who became the CEO. And that CEO, Kunal Dasgupta, he was with us for 14 years. In that beginning, we were in a little warehouse, kind of a small place where the ceiling actually, part of it fell down. So it was a warehouse, really small little container type of an office from which we started, right, in the suburbs of Mumbai. And we found the uplinking, launch of the link, right, from Singapore. Mm-hmm. So tapes used to come from Mumbai to Singapore, and they would, slot it into tape players, and that's how the link went up and onto the satellite, onto the whole of the world. Of course, starting from India, but then it went all over the world. So today, of course, it's in all over the world. Many channels now, not just one. But the decision was to be made whether the uplink was going to be in Hong Kong or Singapore. And the Singapore government, EDB, Economic Development Board, they gave us tax pioneer status and things like that. And because of which, and of course, we were a few of us who were Singaporeans. Mm. And so we encouraged Sony to have the uplink out of Singapore. But the initial days in India, where all the programming was going on, we started televising a few of the shows ourselves, but majority of it, we just gave it outsourced, right? So we get somebody else to, and some of those people are still today producing for SET. So I think that's how the channels come together. They just don't have the bandwidth to create all the shows that you see on it. Right? Many of them are produced by someone else.
Yeah. How does the programming really work? Because a lot of the content must be produced either in-house or, working with other teams and putting it together.
Yes, so there are 3 types. So one is movies. So movies are a very integral part of it, and that's where Shemaru came in, and he had, of course, licensed about 400 movies back then, and now, of course, they have a huge slate of movies. But so one is you release or license movies or other shows, and that's one. 2 is you have formats like Indian Idol, Kaun Banega Crorepati, and all of that you do. 3 is you license things like IPL. So back then we had IPL. It started on Sony, if you don't know that. And then, of course, you have shows that you start yourself and you fund it. And ultimately, you realize that producing shows yourself really is not the forte. You basically filter through these thousands of ideas that come to you, and then you trust the people. You go through the filtering process. There is a programming team, and then they decide, and the budgets, right? So it has to fit in the budget and the genre that we want to be, right? Mm-hmm. So we want to be associated with a certain clean channel look and feel and glossy, high glam, right? And that's what we did initially. And there was a lot of initial content that came from Sony Pictures, right? Columbia TriStar. So they had I Dream of Jeannie and Bewitched and all of those things. They wanted to dub it and put it on the channel. Fortunately, we kept saying this would not work. Fortunately, it didn't work. And so they took it out. But that was an initial days of trying to just slap things together and see what sticks.
So you had to localize the content and programming in a big way.
Absolutely.
Where was that inflection point where you thought that, this is really working?
So I think that the initial stage was extremely scary. It started from a satellite that had to go up in space, and the satellite that went before us exploded. And so had our satellite not gone in place, then we would have had to wait 1 year. And we just didn't have the money to hold back for 1 year. Sony, of course, had all the money in the world. After that, when we started launching many of these shows, there were many channels who came and went. So back then, there was a home TV, which was done by Hindustan Times and Pearson's and all of that. There was a Jain TV. There was so many TV channels, BI TV, which all started and stopped. And so we were very, very scared as to which channels are going to run and which are not going to run. Also, back then, the distribution was all over the place. If you remember, cable wires were being floated from one household to another, and all over India, everything was done by these cable operators who used to distribute these channels. Yeah. So you had to go and befriend them, and we were a free-to-air channel. So we actually had to pay them to carry our channel, right, in many cases. Now, of course, tables have turned. Now we are a subscription and advertising. We as in they are, I still calling them we. But they are now a subscription and ad-driven channels. So I think in the beginning, early days, it was because it was free to air, we were completely dependent on advertisers, and advertisers will come if you have eyeballs. So if you don't have eyeballs, then of course nobody's going to come and advertise on you. So we had to pick and choose some big movies, first of all, and second, we had to bet on a lot of shows, and it's just really, initial stages are really one of those hit or miss, and fortunately we are still here.
So after the scary days, when do you think the wheels started turning in your favor? Were there some pivotal moments that come to mind?
Few things. One is just the restructuring of the programming. So we were heavy into movies. We were heavy into the Columbia TriStar English software, and also some of the repeat shows that we brought from somewhere else because we just didn't have enough budget in the beginning. I think as we started recognizing what is working and what is not working, I think we shifted. So one is we got rid of the Columbia TriStar English programming dubbed in Hindi. Also, the emphasis of percentage of skew on movies, we eased off on it. And then we found a few producers who were amazing, and those shows started working. So, I mean, people relate to us as CID. So it's like, oh, wow, okay, that's a Sony show. Then fast forward, then when Indian Idol came on and, American Idol, we got that channels, got that programming. Kaun Banega Crorepati was a huge risk. So we started that inflection point. But I'd say from 1995 to 2000, that really was a phenomenal period of time, because that's one of the reasons why we got an exit also. So, everybody thinks that we just got one exit, which is in 2013 when we exited and, sold to Sony. But there was one other point in between where in the year 2000, we sold a small percentage of equity at a huge valuation of multi-billion dollars. And so our first exit really was in the year 2000, which was really 5 years into it. All of us kind of could have lived happily ever after.
Wow. Yet you kept going.
Well, of course, because we had most of the equity still left, right? So we had only sold a little bit of our equity, and Sony sold a little bit of their equity in the beginning and to a third party, private capital firm. But after 2000, there was, of course, all upside, right? There was no looking back.
Yeah, a multi-billion-dollar firm in just 5 years. That is rapid pace and rate of change, right?
And at that point in time, right? Yeah. Now unicorns are dime a dozen, and everybody talks about unicorns. But in those days, in year 2000, to get a valuation like that was huge.
Wow. And then when that final 2013 exit happened, what was the valuation or revenue?
It was, again, so the weighted average was still over $1 billion, but the second exit at 2013 was not as lucrative as the first one, because that was at the top of the .com and the valuations were really high, and then it tapered off a bit, but it was still high.
Wow. So that group of Magnificent Seven, did that stay together? Or
so some of us did and some of us didn't, because again, everyone went and did their own thing because we all felt that we knew what we were doing, though it was really the seven together along with Sony. That was really the secret sauce. So I went off and I started another company which went bust. I also...
So you were saying about the Magnificent Seven, the group coming together. Some of you stayed together and the others went.
Yeah, so what happens usually when you exit from a business, then every one of the founders, co-founders usually think that they know what it takes to start another business. And so while Sony was going on, I had started a startup, and that startup went bust and did not last. But post Sony exit, I helped two of my friends start a venture fund, which is called Jungle Ventures, and that's now over $1 billion under management. And so I've tried to retire many times, but again, some of us stayed together. So for example, I have a lot of investments that I made along with Shemaru, with Raman, and so we are dear friends. And so amongst the seven, I'd say that three of them just basically walked away. They didn't want to do anything with the group. I mean, as such, we didn't have anything else going on in the future. A couple of them got together and started a venture capital private equity investment firm in media and technology and all of that. And like I mentioned, I went my own way along with my Jungle Ventures partners who were not part of Sony.
Wow. And then, because you mentioned you came from a very humble beginning, and to have this kind of financial abundance in your life, and that too very early on, right? How old were you at that point?
So I think two parts, right? One is, I'll tell you that when the first exit happened, I was 45 years old. I think that the important thing is that the risk-taking ability I already had, right? Each one of us had to take a risk because the amount of money required as joint venture partners to put into Sony Entertainment Television was huge. And so I had to sell all my stocks. I had to sell all my IBM stocks. I had to withdraw my 401k, which is something that happens in America. And I had to withdraw all of that and put everything in it. And everything would have gone bust and if this wouldn't have worked, right? So that's the kind of risk you take. And the rewards you get as a result of it is, of course, a lot of hard work, a lot of luck, but of course, wanting to take the risk.
from a return standpoint, can you quantify it? You don't have to share numbers, but whatever.
It's infinite. It's infinite. As in, the multiplier is over thousands and tens of thousands in some cases, because you invest at different points in time, at different valuations over time. And so the absolute initial one, when I go back and look at it, could have been valued at millions, and the exit was in billions. So you can tell the multiplier.
That's fantastic. And at 45, to have this kind of financial liquidity, what does one do with the money, like your book's titled?
The good news was that it was a liquidity in a city like Singapore. You can, but that's not enough, is how the thought process was back then, because we had majority of our equity still left, right? So it is really at 2013 that it was the come to Jesus conversation, saying, okay, now what shall we do? Because till then we didn't know where it was going, right? Because if you thought about the equity that was left, its valuation was huge in the year 2000. But by the time 2013 rolled, so much had happened, and the valuations, of course, was going here and there. Ultimately, we did get a reasonable exit from it, but it's at that point in time you pause and you say, okay, what shall we do? But in the year 2000, obviously you park that money aside because you're still going. I had my other startup. I had, of course, the Sony still business going as a board member, right? I was still contributing and flying here and there. So you just park that money aside, and the asset allocation game, I only learned along the way. I didn't know much about it in the year 2000.
Right. So 9 startups you've been through. Which startups or which experiences taught you the most?
Of course, I would say Sony, because it was at a different level. We went in there naive, and every board meeting, every quarter over 18 years, you can imagine how much we grew and learned, and taking decisions like World Cup cricket rights, and making decisions of IPL, making decisions on Indian Idol, movies. We actually produced a few movies ourselves, etc. Hiring some really big shots, CXOs who actually brought the television channel to where it was, even in 2013 and post 2013. So I think I learned the most from SET, Sony Entertainment Television. I would say that probably my number 2 would be the startup that failed. Actually, it was an asset tracking company, and that failed over time because of the 2007-2008 financial bust. And along with that, we didn't get Series C funding as a result of it. Today, if we were alive, we would have probably been a unicorn, because asset tracking companies are a unicorn these days. So I would say that I learned a lot from that. And then, of course, the learning was as part of a venture capital fund. So 2 parts. One is Avishkaar, which is an impact fund that I helped Vineet Rai start. And second is, of course, Jungle Ventures, which is the tech venture capital fund. So I learned a lot from those 2 as well.
Amazing. And, is there some hint of regret in terms of not getting the full exit, say, during the .com time?
Oh, not at all.
That?
Not at all. I'm so happy. If after 2000, if I hadn't got an exit also, I could have lived happily ever after. So I didn't have a number in mind that said, okay, if I arrive at this, then it's enough. It was already, my dad, before he passed away, he asked me, he said, how many zeros are there if you count it in rupees terms? And I couldn't give him that answer, right? Because it had many more zeros than I thought.
Yeah. Okay. So now that you spoke about, you've written a book and you've authored a book called What Shall We Do With All This Money? Of course, now we can understand where the title comes from. But what inspired you to write this book?
So actually, it was a one-line epiphany, which says, you work extremely hard to make money. Then you work hard to make money on your money, and then you die. This is a simple life of affluent people. And I live in Singapore, where all around me I see this. There are people who have so much money that they're working for their kids. They don't need that money that they're making today. That money they're making will actually go to their kids. They know it also. A piece of it goes to philanthropy, but our per capita giving, percentage giving is very, very low compared to, let's say, the American society. So majority of the money is all going to their kids. Now, my point is that, can we smell the roses? Can you do something with your life? If you think that life is all about going to work and making more money and bragging about it in cocktail circuits, right? That's what it is. And so I try to appeal to people of my age category and my age group. I'm not so sure if any of my friends read my book, but I think the kids got a lot from it. So I think ultimately the book became quite popular with the millennials. So a lot of millennials wanted to meet. They wanted me to introduce them to people who they read in the book, saying, oh, this model is so smart. I want to actually meet this person and want to follow. And many of millennials have actually gone. And millennials, the next generation, want purpose. Many of them don't want to join their parents' business, right? And so they are looking for some new ideas of how to live their life and how to have purpose. So some of them become philanthropists and nonprofit, but many of them want to be social impact investors, or they want to start a company which is a social impact company. And this book actually helps them think through a lot of these ideas.
You have interviewed some fantastic folks like late Ratan Tata and Deepak Chopra, Sanjeev Bikhchandani, who I've hosted on the show as well, and Mohandas Pai. Were there any surprising stories for you that challenged your own personal beliefs and relationship with money?
So I thought that I would get a lot of pushback because this idea of making money on money, I thought is very common. And time again, what came back is this: what shall we do with all this money? I remember Rohini Nilekani, right, telling me, which is actually in the book, where she says that at first of the year, we decide how much allocation we put to philanthropy. And on 31st December, when we finish, or there's the 31st March, when we finish on 31st March, then actually we've given up all this money, but our portfolio is higher than when we started. Why? Because Infosys stocks was going up. So he says we have a huge problem, right? This giving back. What a great problem to have. So I think in that way, I was quite surprised that people are more engaged with how to give back. Right? Amit Chandra, for example, 50% of his time, he's with his consulting company, 50% of his time and money he gives away, he and his wife. So I've got so many of these folks coming forward and saying, yes, it's the utilization of money, which is really what impresses me the most, rather than accumulation of wealth. I don't get so enamored anymore when some kid says, okay, I started a company that's valuation is a unicorn, $1 billion. Great. Now the question is, what will you do with it, right? Are you going to exit, or are you going to be taking this to 5 and 10 billion and hopefully stay or die in the process? Or are you going to take that money and use it somewhere? So I tell a lot of young kids to say that when the equity is not worth that much, park some aside to philanthropy, right? So when the business grows, there'll be a huge pool that you'll be giving away to philanthropy to nonprofits, right? And you also have a maqsad. You say, okay, wow, I have something that you keep a picture of that, whatever nonprofit you're giving it to, let's say Akhand Jyoti Eye Hospital, then you'll constantly be saying, okay, I'm working not only for myself and my employees and my customers, but I'm also going to have a big, huge windfall that's going to go to Akhand Jyoti Eye Hospital, for example.
Yeah, that's a fantastic framework that you've shared. But in terms of, because I resonate with that a lot, what you just said about millennials wanting a purpose and not just accumulation of wealth. What are some frameworks that you can share in terms of, if someone, say, early in their journey still, early 30s, but exploring ways to have a purposeful, meaningful life, but they don't have that much money to give away at this point, right? Or they're at the start of their journey. How would you advise them?
Right. So advise them on giving, on what to do with their time and effort and energy and money.
Both.
So I think the first part is really at the age of 30, you can't give up the economic life, right? The economics is going to be hovering around you. So unless, you're from a family and she says, I only want to do philanthropy, so put me part of the philanthropy group, and I only want to be part of decision making, how to give away the money to make most impact, then it's fine. But if she says that, no, I also want to be partly in an entrepreneurial role, then the freedom should be given to that person to say, okay, let's find a purpose. Now, what can be the purpose? Impact. Now, impact can be in many ways, right? So whether it is food, it's hunger, it's health. So there'll be health tech, there is agri-tech, there is, huge in edu-tech, right? In India, all of us think that education is number one, right? If you teach them how to fish, it's better than giving them a fish. I think this is really, really important for them. But you don't want to only start a nonprofit, then it's fine. I understand that. So you want to have a social impact for-profit startup. And 20 years ago, that was an unknown. Vineet Rai, Avishkaar, pioneers like that, really, they changed the map of India, where they taught people to say that, hey, you can have a for-profit social impact startup. And people invest in it. There are VCs who invest in it. And so if you've got a good set of partners, good team, good ideas, climate, huge, right, today. And so you can pick just about anything in climate. You can pick things in energy, for example. Now, either you have your own idea, or you, Shrishti, have an idea. And so you're saying, okay, fine, I don't have an idea, but I have the resources, I have the wherewithal, and you have an idea. Well, let me support you. So two of us become a co-founders, right? And then I support you, and then you be the CEO or I be the CEO, doesn't matter, but we are co-founders, and you go forward. And that's really the social impact piece. And then, of course, when you make money or you're in the process of giving away the money, that, of course, requires to put your hand on your heart. So it's a heart, mind, and hand, all three coming together, right? We talk about it all the time. And I think the hand plays a part also. So it's not just writing checks and attending some lunches and just writing checks and saying, okay, I'm doing my part, but actually coming forward, right, and putting your mind and your hand there to actually support the nonprofit, right? I think just giving away money by itself doesn't appeal to me. But I'm okay with people who just want to give away money. You must do something to do something for the world, right? Giving is a huge thing in my personal life, and I encourage all my friends and family to ideate on that.
That's honestly, a lot of people don't think that way. Giving doesn't come naturally to a lot of folks because, there's this whole stress that I think millennials have. You see and you compare your lives with people on social media, and you always have this sense of feeling that, you don't have enough, or, your expenses are way higher than they should be, and, everyone else has it much better. How do you deal with that feeling?
So I was very surprised when I interviewed a few millennials in my book. And our expectation of a highly affluent family youngster is that this person's going to be a brat, for example, or they're going to be, just from a place where I'm saying, okay, I'm just going to take, right? This person is basically just going to say that I deserve to basically take this money and move forward. It really belongs to me. It's my family heritage. However, many millennials that I've met from affluent families, they will surprise you, right? So it's not where millennials are, all the millennials are only looking at social media and seeing that somebody else is doing better than me, therefore what can I do to do that? No, there are many millennials who are also in this group of friends who are talking to each other, and whether they're making social impact investments, they'll all talk to each other and saying, hey, have you seen this alternative protein fund? And it's a climate thing and it's a big deal. Let's actually invest in it. And there are 2 or 3 or 4 of them actually come and invest in these type of things. So there are a group of people, but again, by and large, yes, percentage of people, I'd say the majority of them are exactly as you said, that they want to actually have what I call bragging rights. But bragging rights can be of many ways, right? So bragging rights is, the person is traveling all over the world, person is always on a charter flight, person is always posting and wow, this is amazing, glamorous life, or that person has more money than me, or that person is buying more designer bags than me. Bragging rights come in many different ways, right? But this one, which if it sticks on, and giving is such a personal journey, and if you start giving and you enjoy it, then that multiplies much faster, right? Yeah. So it's generative. And so if that generative habit starts forming and you're in a group of satsang, the friends that you make, and they all start really understanding this giving and enjoy that giving and share stories on giving, just like we entrepreneurs used to do in the young days, where, hey, what are you doing? What am I doing? How are you doing this? How are you finding people? People are attrition, so much people are flying for 1,000 rupees more per month, etc. We used to talk about that. Now giving, there's bragging right in that. What? Oh, you're doing in health, but I'm doing something in prisons. And I have millennials bragging about their giving to each other. It's okay. That's a great thing.
Yeah. And how would you, after writing this book and going through this process, what is your definition of having enough?
It's a personal story that you have to answer for yourself. There's nobody else who can help you other than people's experience. So my experience personally is because I came from a humble beginning, and I'm just so content with my enough that I don't wake up every morning thinking about how to make money. And then there are people who have thousands of crores of money, and I ask them, what do you do? And they say, I'm day trader. And I really wonder and worry about it, because really, after having a few thousand crores, you're playing the market and you're bragging that, okay, I invested in this, invested in that, and I made more money. And who else gets impressed by that? Why would I get impressed by someone who has 2,000 crore rupees, who's making some good calls on day trading and making more money? But people get enamored by that. So my take would be that find something else to do. Then the enough part will come together. 2 parts. One is find something else to do other than economics, and 2, give. And if you do that, then the enough suddenly just, stares at you. You just really start figuring out, saying, oh my God, there is a have-not, which is something that I can help. And the joy you see in the impact that you make usually is much higher than that gain that you'll make by investing in, let's say, the Geo IPO and making huge amounts upside and say, oh my God, see, I backed Mukesh Bhai, and so look at how much money I made over the years. Great. What did you do? in that.
Truly, I think when you are living a life which has purpose and meaning, and in a way giving back also, that kind of feeling I think is truly unmatched, because it can't be quantified, but it definitely can be felt in many ways, right? Which story from the book stood out to you the most?
So again, I said that the millennials part surprised me as a group, not one particular millennial. That's one. Two is, I think, this thesis. Everyone who is smart, affluent, has a successful exit or a business or a CXO, the brain is so clued on and the ego is so stuck to that brain that everyone is in that journey continuing to brag. That's one thing that stood out for me. Saying every one of them had a story, every one of them felt that what I was doing was just incredible. And in fact, it is. Every one of those people have their own thesis, and they've come to that thesis and they're following their heart and passion and they're giving back. I think to me, the amusing part is just the bragging right of it, saying, okay, look at this. I was huge when I did my startup and I exited from it. I'm a billionaire, for example, but hey, even look at how I'm giving back. My sack is heavier than yours, right? That's one piece. The other piece is just the giving back.
Yeah.
I think the giving back part is just so standard across the board that almost every one of these folks are focused and they put more and more and more in time and effort, but also they try to pull in some friends. So if that person has thousands of crores and they're putting hundreds of crores into their philanthropy, they are not satisfied. They want to attract other people to say, hey, look at how I'm giving. Can you give your 100 crore to me? And so can we grow this, right? So that business acumen, they apply to their philanthropy.
You've been a part of many interesting groups and getting interesting set of people together, be it starting up these funds. How does one get this highly energetic group of people together and bring them on a shared mission? Because, you've reinvented yourself several times, and we'll dive into the happiness index because I can clearly see that yours is pretty high. So how does one keep reinventing themselves in this journey and, keep meeting that bar?
A very small percentage of it is my doing. My doing is only that when it came to me, I played my cards and I made the decision to back or support the thesis or that person. But that person appeared in my life. I've been incredibly lucky, and there are stories after stories, including how I went into IBM, how I went to come to Singapore to start India as a country, how I got into Sony, we'd already talked about that, how I got into Jungle Ventures, right? I was just innocently introducing two people and I thought they will just go away. And they came back and said, oh, can you be a fund manager, a managing partner for the first two funds? I tried to retire a few times and I've unsuccessfully done that. Or Avishkaar, Vinit Rai, how that whole story happened, and Vinit Rai came to Singapore to look for some money to invest in social impact in the year like early 2000. Everybody wrote a check and thought that we're going to lose money. But look at it today. They are more than $1 billion under management. So I guess I've been extremely lucky that the right people were sent to me and I picked and chose those people. Maybe that's the only piece, the sliver of my addition to what happened in my life. But I've been extremely fortunate to meet some of these incredible people with ideas and diligence and passion and execution, right? So, I mean, there are many funds like impact funds like Avishkaar that have come and gone, but look at the size and scale of what Vinit Rai has done, and hats off to him, right? It's just really, and changing over time, right? To make sure that you stay with it. And if something's not working, what do you do? First year, all the investments he made didn't work out, and he openly tells you about it, saying, I made all these mistakes. Probably Jungle Ventures, we did that same thing in the first year. So yeah, I mean, I wish really I could take all the credit for all the things that have happened in my life. I'd say that it's all, grace, transcendence.
That's a very profound note. Would love to dive into how you think about spirituality. And because if you were saying luck played such an important part of your life, how would you blend spirituality and luck in what happened?
It's inexplicable, most importantly. It's inexplicable because I have no proof. I don't know any better. So is the karma theory there? Well, everybody tells me it is. So I say, okay, maybe it is there. Is there a creator God? Many people say it is. I'm not sure there is. In the Jain philosophy and Buddhist philosophy, the God is inside you. You are the God, etc. That probably resonates more with me. I think that makes more sense. But recently, I took a course on astronomy in my Tower Fellows program at UT Austin, University of Texas at Austin. And it just boggled my mind how vast the universe is, right? So the universe has 2 trillion galaxies in it. Just think about it. The space is 93 billion light years. 1 light year is 93 trillion kilometers. So the size of 2 trillion galaxies. Each galaxy has between 2 to 300 billion stars. Sun is 1 star. Our Milky Way has 300 billion stars. And this is only 4% of the universe, the space that we're talking about. These 2 trillion galaxies, they take only 4% of the space. 60% plus is dark energy, 20 plus percent is dark matter, which nobody knows what it is, and there are people are doing PhDs in it. One day when that gets discovered, maybe they realize that that is God. The dark matter and dark energy is God. And we have no concept of it because we have no idea of it. Our limited brain power is only capable of thinking of God in just a way. Now, God as a universal power, a force, a person, a human creator, we don't know. So I'd say that my spirituality is I do Vipassana meditation. That's where I get my Zen, and that's where I get my happiness index. I'm content, and I just am so so lucky that I have this state of mind, which is partly genetic, really, and I'm so thankful to my parents for giving me this brain and heart and body.
When you think about, because I think about this in my meditations quite a bit, about how insignificant we really are. Because if, we are just a tiny dot in this whole giant universe, how do you place significance in your life? Or how do you think about the significance of life or your life?
Well, you don't. The day I figured out my legacy, I arrived. And my legacy is nothing. Done. When I'm gone, I'm done. I'm not living to have a legacy where people will think about me after you go. By the way, there are statistics about how often people think about you after you pass away. It's insignificant. After 1 year, nobody will remember you. If you're a Ratan Tata, maybe they'll remember you for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. If you're an Osho or, if you're somebody who's really been out there as a spiritual leader or a phenomenal leader, political leader, otherwise nobody remembers you. So what is it that you're striving and thriving to do here? While you're alive, do people remember you? And do people pat your back saying, hey, wow, you're amazing? Even that is not required, frankly, but let's assume that that's something very important to you. But now you're saying, I'm going to live all my life so that after I go away, people will remember me. Oh my God, how vain can that concept be? To me, my mind, I just don't get it. So, there are donors who actually want their names on hospitals and schools. And I'm saying, okay, great. You won't be there to see it, but they think that maybe, there is a voodoo science and therefore I'll be up there and I'll be looking at it. I'll feel so good. Really? Is that why you're doing all of this? So that maybe there is a concept like afterlife and you're actually watching that whole thing from afterlife and getting satisfaction while you're living this life and you're not doing anything about this life to make sure that you're the best person that you can be.
Like they say, you were gone in 3 generations, yet on a daily basis, why do you deal with so much stress and anxiety about what your path in life should be? How do you maintain a healthy happiness index?
I think most important thing is that the mind is where we live our life. I'm living my life in my mind. So if my mind, I feel that you're a good person, then you are. If my mind, I feel that, well, there is something about Shrishti which I'm not 100% sure, that's the beginning of everything, right? Then, of course, the heart follows because the emotions, go into the mind and say, okay, it influences the mind to believe or not believe some things. And so you look at an advertisement or you look at somebody's social media post and it makes you emotionally, react to it, saying, I'm either envious or I'm so happy for this person, etc. My disposition is just so natural where I feel good about the world. I feel good about the friends and family who are doing well. How can I support them? How can I actually make them more successful? Because I am just, fortunate that I have made it, and why not the others? And so I'm in a place in my brain where I'm looking for new paths in the neural network, right? We don't use our neural network, and studies have shown that how you expand. That's one of the reasons I did the Tower Fellows program, because I'm very curious. And so can I expand that neural network? Because it keeps going down the same path. You get up in the morning and your path says, I want tea or coffee. I don't drink tea, coffee, for example. But somebody who does, the path takes them through the same thing. If you're very disciplined on time, it'll keep taking you and keep constantly watching the time. Somebody who is completely lethargic or not so stressed about time, they just live their life because the neural network is set. And my point is, well, the neural network is much, much more powerful. Brain studies have been done, scanning have been done, and people will realize, right, that there is lots of things you can do to your brain, including there are memory games, there are puzzle games, there are spiritual games, there are all games or spiritual processes that you go through, meditation being one of them, whereby you can actually expand your neural network. So I'd say my life is extremely happy because of my mind primarily. And then I'm extremely fortunate that my body has the way it is. I'm 70 years old. My mom had natural black hair when she passed away at 92, God rest her soul. And have good genes. So, physically I'm fit. People tell me I don't look 70. I'm so happy to hear that. It is what it is.
Well, I just told you that too.
Thank
you
you.
don't look 70 at all. But, I've also done Vipassana meditation. I think after those 10 days, something in you profoundly shifts.
Correct.
And there's just so much inner realization that you have. It feels like, you've done a lot of inner work. How has Vipassana and meditation transformed your life?
So I've done Vipassana 3 times so far, and each one is better than the previous one. So I'm due to go for another one again. I'd say that it's a process. So again, it's all about the mind. And I've done transcendental meditation before that. I've done inner engineering, the Sadhgurus also. So I basically scan religions, I scan meditation practices. And concentrative meditation appeals to me. I feel I don't need music, I don't need somebody talking to me, I don't like guided meditations anymore. I used to do that before. So for me, I think concentrative meditation is really what you need, and Vipassana is a process in that, and so I just enjoy that. I learned it, and I do it. I practice every day, twice. The number of time, the duration differs. It just depends on my state of mind that day. And also, it's not like I have to do it. So I just want to always be conscious of being addicted to anything that you have, whether it is food, whether it is travel, whether it's meditation, whether it's love. Everything has its addiction, and I just always consciously watch it. But again, Vipassana is something that I do, and it has profoundly shifted my energy. I think it's made me more zen and calm and peaceful, compassionate, and I think that gives me the strings of happiness. So I call it micro moments. I'm having a micro moment right now. I'm really enjoying this conversation, and that's a micro moment. I capture it, and I string these micro moments. So there is a conclave for Akhand Jyoti Eye Hospital, and what I do for Akhand Jyoti, I get micro moments. I string these along, and that creates joy for me. So am I done? No. Am I having 24/7 state of joy? No. I think that's when you arrive. That's how I feel, is a human being arrives into the state of nirvana.
Absolutely. But everyone has setbacks. Everyone deals with negative emotions. We all have anger, jealousy, envy, and a lot of negative emotions that keep coming up as you go through the day. How have you trained your mind to deal with
So meditation, Vipassana has helped me. But the next step after that meditative state is where anytime I go into a negative feeling, negative thought, or a news comes which is just so difficult for me to handle, if it is something that I need to dwell on, I will. Somebody passes away who's very dear to me, I dwell on it. I try to find those cherished moments, and I live in that moment, and I let it simmer. However, most of the times, if I have a negative thought or some negative feelings or negative emotions, I now know how to snap out of it. So I just snap, and then I'll think about something positive. I say, okay, what am I looking forward to? Oh, I'm going to Egypt next year. I'm going to Malta and Sicily next year. So I just take my brain to a happy place. And my happiness is travel, for example. I just love traveling. I love meeting people. Almost every port, I have a friend, and I just love, now I'm going to San Francisco, so I'm going to meet some dear friends of mine who went to college with me, and I'm looking forward to that. So when the negative emotion starts brewing, I immediately try to snap out of it. And now I'm trained well enough, and I know when I have to snap out of it, and when is it that I want to just hold that and let it simmer.
I wanted to go deep into capital allocation frameworks in this conversation, in that outline I sent to you. But this conversation has been so enriching with profound life lessons. It's gone in another direction completely. But coming back to, say, capital allocation framework, since you have been, say, LP in a fund, and you've seeded a lot of initiatives, how do you think about capital allocation in general?
So most importantly, when I came into money, I first said, let's look after my own family, because we came from a have-not background. My wife came from a very affluent family. So for the first time in my life that I was able to give her. And so I bought a penthouse in Singapore, and I said, okay, here, let's have the lifestyle settled. Once I did that, then I turned my attention to helping others. Now, how do you help others? One is you give back, you write a check and you give a grant. So that's one way to help. But the more important way that I figured out how to help is to help entrepreneurs. I was myself an entrepreneur. So I said, okay, who are these entrepreneurs? Let's find these entrepreneurs and how can I help them? And in the process, then I found venture capital funds like Avishkaar, for example. And I said, okay, if a fund can also help an entrepreneur, that the whole journey continues. So can I use my money in a way, recognizing that a percentage of it will go away? It's like a VC fund. Angel investing, I did. I invested in probably between 50 to 100 startups, right? Because that's the venture capital model. But I was just, always, my heart always went out to these entrepreneurs, right? And especially if it was social impact. The minute it was social impact, 9 out of 10 times I would look at it much more seriously than just the tech entrepreneur who was just trying to make money but no impact, social impact. Mm-hmm. So I think I made a lot of investments and my allocation was completely skewed. My private bankers taught me how to do asset allocation, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stages. And the fifth one being that you're 90% in equity. One is where 90% are in fixed income or bonds. And ideally they said you're in level 3. And then I found myself on level 4. I'm more skewed, more risk taker, so I'll do 4. But over time, they said that alternative investment should be 10%. Okay, if you want to really push, maybe you can go to 20. I think that I was probably more like 60, 70% in alternative, right? And I was illiquid for the longest time. Now that I've turned 70, I've stopped investing in startups and venture capital funds, and I'm just harvesting. So my liquidity is just starting to come. Every month, every quarter, every year, something comes back to me, and I just now put it in, again, level 3 or level 4. So I'm skewed heavily towards equity right now. But yeah, bonds and fixed income, of course, the interest rates are coming down. And so, I'm not so enamored by it. I haven't really done much in crypto, though I do own a little bit of crypto and I own a little bit of gold.
A lot of HNIs and family offices watch the show as well. And often what you hear from bankers and, people you meet, it's always like, your private market allocations should be, say, sub 10% or 15% now, as they say. But 60-70% in illiquid assets is a lot of exposure, right? Have your private market bets played out well for you?
Again, yes and no. Like everyone else, many of them that I thought would work didn't work. And many of them, where I've invested a very small amount of money, gave me 15, 20, 30, 40 X's and took care of my other sins. So over time, yes, money came and went. I'm not an outcome measurement guy. When I was in IBM, when I was in Sony, I was completely driven by outcome measurement. I'm no longer. I don't know really. I have a very dear friend who looks after my overarching portfolio. Probably you'll have to ask him how much money I have, how am I doing, how are my returns, what is my allocation now. I'm not bothered by it. I have enough money, I know, and I'm not bothered that I want to make that additional percentage, 5%, 3% more. Let's put it here, let's risk it here, let's risk it there. I did like the startup ecosystem because those entrepreneurs actually were betting their time and money and energy. If they were going to make a useful product or service, that was good enough for me, right? I would look at them which is is this person capable? Right? Who and what is the thing that they're doing, and then how are they able to execute? These are the 3 tiers with which I then decide. But if they have an idea for a useful product or service that's going to help the humankind, I invest in that. And hopefully it works out.
Are there any red flags that you keep in mind when taking these decisions?
Integrity is a big deal for me. And I've had some people who've done extremely well, but I'm absolutely fine with it that I didn't make money with them. And many cases I got saved because of integrity, and I could sense, I could sense that this is something red flag, and I just walk away. It's a big deal for me. I must trust the person, and the person must trust me.
I was listening to one of your interviews where you were talking about how some of your relationships have served you for decades, right? And how does one build those relationships, be it with mentors, colleagues, or people who you want to do business with in the long term? Because your life is truly an example of that.
So the one trick my father taught me is business, people want to do business with likable people, right? If you're not a likable person, what do I need in my life right now to deal with you? Why do I need to do this podcast? Why? I mean, what am I going to get from it? I'm happy that there are some people who might get something out of it, but if the person is likable, I want to do business with them. Same way, they must find something likable in me. And so I think that's a mutual relationship. We attract, right? In a room full of 30 people, 2 people who are likable, their souls will find them. Math.org, math.com has got actually lots of statistics on it, how 2 people who are supposed to meet in a room full of 30 people. But barring that, I'd say that if the person is likable, if I trust that person, they're a pleasing personality, and I'm a pleasing personality to them, the chemistry just evolves. And I've made some amazing friends just based on that. My partner, Raman of Shemaru, his family and my family can't see why we are friends. We have nothing in common. Absolutely nothing in common.
Then what
But
brought you together?
we were definitely brothers in the previous life. That's why. I can't explain it any other way. There must be something about it, some influence, somewhere external influence, which is inexplicable.
And now that you're 70, you said that you still have very exciting plans for what lies ahead, but you're not involved very actively in your entrepreneurial and investing side, right? So what are you looking forward to now?
So when I did my Tower Fellows program at UT Austin, one of the exercise we had to do is called Designing Your Life. It's a book written by 2 Stanford professors, which also includes a workbook. And I recommend people to actually, who are figuring out what they're going to do for the next 25 years, to go and do this exercise. When I did that exercise, at the end of it, what surfaced was philanthropy, giving back, and I was already a board member of Akhand Jyoti Eye Hospital. So that surfaced as the top-notch thing that I want to do. 2, I have an alternative protein venture capital fund called Good Protein, which is trying to remove the animals from the food chain. And, of course, plant-based is kind of tapered a bit, but fermentation and cultivated meat is the holy grail over the next 3 to 5 years. So I'm just involved in that a little bit. And then the third is, of course, meeting people, helping people, and traveling, right? I mean, that's really my life now. I've contained it. And you won't believe it, Shrishti, that the day I announced at 70 that I'm not going to make any investments, 90% of my traffic on telephone call and email and WhatsApp decreased. I'm so happy.
What do you do with that free time?
Again, 3 things that I would recommend to people is 1, you practice wealth affluence. When you practice wealth affluence, there is a point in time when you say, I have enough. And you say, pause. Now I've got my wealth affluence. I can move on. Second thing you practice is time affluence. And that's where I'm at. Time affluence is you do whatever you do you do whatever you want with your life, and you spend the time meeting whomever you want, doing whatever you want, right, wherever you want, right, and you have the wealth affluence, and therefore you can do that. The third is mind affluence, right? So mind affluence, I'm a work in progress. That's where you say, are you compassionate? Are you happy? Are you peaceful? Are you meditative? I mean, are you really in a Zen state of mind? And are you going to bring that state of joy in your mindful affluence? And that's really the last step, the last piece of your life.
But to me, it seems you're already there.
Yes, okay, so I feel that I'm there. I think we can all do better, right? So even my time affluence, I'm really fine-tuning it. January of this year, once I turned 70, I switched off one piece of it, which was taking a huge amount of time. And so I'm allocating that time to other things. I spend time with my grandkids now. I just love them coming to Singapore. I go to Mumbai very frequently to spend time with them. So I enjoy that part of it. And then, of course, going forward, who knows, right, what else is coming down the pipe. But I would obviously suggest to people that happiness and mind affluence, I think we can spend a lot more time. So would I spend more time on spiritual journeys and meetings? There are so many good, amazing spiritual leaders out there. Some of them unknown, some of them in small sects, somewhere out there in places like Dharamsala, places like Dalhousie, places like Palampur, etc. And I get invited by my friends. Every one of them have found their thing. I'm not married to one sect. I go scanning and I just go meet all of these people. I want to meet all these spiritual leaders and spend time with them. That's what I want to do going forward in the future. I wish I could read scriptures, but I have a friend who reads scriptures and I spend a lot of time with him so he can tell me what he reads. So he's my chat GPT for spiritualism.
When it comes to timeless principles, I know you don't like to think about legacy, but when it comes to timeless principles that you think have served you well in your life, what are those things, if you could share with the audience?
Again, I think showing up wherever there is an opportunity, of whatever kind, whether it's giving back or getting back or investing or starting a company, is showing up, right? Just being there present, applying your mind, hand, and heart, all three, right? Not just your heart, because you can get swayed. So that's one, I'd say, show up. Second is be very diligent, be very patient, but always think of executing well, working hard, working smart. Really make sure that you're giving it all you have. And that giving is not just you yourself, but your circle of influence. I mean, I have a huge circle of influence, and I'm so happy with that, because wherever I go, anything I need, if I need some bouncing board, I pick up the phone and I'll call somebody, and they'll just be so happy to give me good feedback, good advice. But then you are the CEO. You have to have the 360-degree view. Ultimately, all these different feedback that you get, you've got to apply and make a good executive decision. So I'd say become a good executive decision maker. I'd say that's really so important. I tell my kids about that all the time.
Dive into it a little more.
So executive decision making is, you get influenced by social media, you get influenced by what you read in the newspapers if you do, or television channels, shows, news, etc. You get influenced by people personally saying, oh my God, crypto, Bitcoin is going to go to $1 million, right? And so what are you going to do? You're just going to run and buy a Bitcoin? Really? That's not how it works, right? You got to be a good executive decision maker. The decisions that you make, are you taking unreasonable risk? A lot of people take unreasonable risk, but are you taking limited, well thought through risk at the right point? Or are you going to put all your money in fixed deposit, for example? That's one way to live, right? If it really bothers you, just, if you're working in a good job, don't feel bad about not being an entrepreneur. Or if you're an entrepreneur, don't feel bad that your CXO friends are making millions of dollars nowadays, right? So again, become a good executive decision maker where it works for you, right? You have to look at your own situation, and not just because it's working for Shrishti, so I should start a podcast, because you know what? I can also do what Shrishti is doing. Well, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, but so many people make decisions just on the back of what other people are doing, or to be socially acceptable in one way. I just before we end the conversation, I think it's very important to talk about your protein fund, as well as the work that you've done in climate or enabled that, because truly sustainability isn't just a fancy topic; it's the need of the hour, right? What are those things that led you to do work in this space?
So my partner Gautam, he was in Silicon Valley, and he had 2 amazing exits. And he called me one day. He was a friend from Thai, and we'd known each other for 20 years. And he said, hey, I want to come to Singapore, because Singapore has got this alternative protein as a huge sector that they're supporting. And so I said, yes, come to Singapore. And we started talking about it, and we ended up doing a venture capital fund. Now, this alternative protein fund, which is called Good Protein Fund, essentially invests in early stage startups, deep technology, in 3 verticals only. That's it. That's all we do. No restaurants, no distribution, nothing. Plant-based, cell-based, and fermentation. And only these 3 technologies. So cell-based is lab-grown meat, as they call it, right? This is about 3 to 5 years out. And when that happens, it's going to change the entire worldview. Climate is a big deal. There isn't enough arable land and water. And the carbon footprint is so bad today in the world that there won't be enough protein to feed the world if you just keep going at the pace at which we're going. And it's not healthy, right? So 80% of the antibiotics are pumped into animals, right? And so people talk about processed animal food versus slaughtered animal. Well, they don't realize that the slaughtered animal has contamination and it's not good for you. So if the doctor tells you that, okay, out of the 5 times you eat meat, can you let go of meat once and eat alternative protein? And that's really the thesis of this. So Impossible came out of it, and Beyond Meat came out of it. The plant-based has tapered off in terms of its, its adoption, but fermentation is really growing a lot, and so is cultivated meat. I think that over the next 5 to 10 years, you'll see this thriving. This is like the internet. In 2000, internet came and faded out, and nobody knew what to do with it. And then suddenly today you look at it and you can't even think of life without internet. This is kind of a similar analogy, I would say, where alternative protein is going through its Gartner graph. And hopefully one day in the next 2, 3, 4 years, you'll see it coming back again.
Absolutely. If you were to give our audience a view of what this industry could look like by 2030, what would you say?
No, I'd say that the percentage of people consuming this product is going to be higher, because today, when you look at alternative dairy, oat, hazelnut, almond milk, all of this, right? Alternate to egg also, for example. But alternative dairy in America is about 15% of the market. Most people don't know this. So all the mainstream dairy product guys are putting a line for alternative dairy now because their percentages are going down, right? The revenues are going down. So if it is 15% now without actually much, Oatly is really the only name that is well known because it's publicly traded. I'd say going forward, I'd say that you will see a lot more consumption in dairy, alternative dairy. You will see a lot more consumption in hybrid products. So right now we're seeing plant, for example, and fermentation by itself or cultivated meat by itself. But once the cultivated meat comes out and that goes into a hybrid product with a plant-based, then what you will see, and or even real meat. So there are some companies now testing slaughtered animal real meat with this meat which is called cultivated meat, and they're trying to do a hybrid product of those also. So there'll be many ways in which the usage of slaughtered animal should and will go down in my mind.
Amazing. JP, you've had such a phenomenal life. You've done so much in terms of contributing to people's lives in such meaningful ways and through different initiatives, and empowered so many entrepreneurs. I wish you all the success with your initiatives to come. And you truly exemplify a life well lived.
Thank you so much, Shrishti, and I appreciate this conversation. I really enjoyed talking to you today.
I loved it too.
All right,
Thank you.
Take care.
Honestly, I started this conversation thinking I'll dive deep into capital allocation frameworks and his investment philosophy. But what I'm leaving with are principles and timeless wisdom on a life well lived. JP's energy and enthusiasm for life and purpose is so infectious. I hope you enjoyed watching today's video. If you liked this video, remember to subscribe. It really helps us in bringing the best content to you. Thank you for watching.